morning, everybody. It's lovely to see all your masked faces. You know the rules. If you're drinking, you don't have to wear your mask, so just keep sipping on that coffee nice and slow. You're golden. That line, see the love. I love that line. Because of my job, and people know what I do for a living, I often have these really weird conversations. I was dirt biking on Thursday. One of my buddies, I hadn't seen him in a year, shows up. I'm like, hey, dude, how's it going? Good. Waiting as everyone kind of gets their gear on, he starts talking about, I was like, well, where have you been the last year? He's like, well, life's been a bit crazy. 3 weeks ago, I was in the shop with my dad trying to get a part for my dirt bike. And we had bolts on the counter, and I was saying, is that the bolt? And my dad also started to shake. And then the words coming out of his mouth didn't make any sense anymore. And he said, I knew what was going on immediately. My dad's having a stroke. So he grabs his dad, puts his dad's arms around his back to hold him so he can carry them to the house so he can call an ambulance. His dad's in long-term care right now. They're not sure the prognosis. And he looks at me and says, this is the time you ask the questions about the big guy in the sky. And he looks at me in the eyes and he says, you know what I'm talking about, Clausen. There's these moments in life that simple answers don't solve, right? What do you say to a guy who just carried his dad into the ambulance as he watched him having a stroke? Buck up, camper. Write in your gratitude journal, you'll be fine. He's going, why the hell do bad things happen to good people like my dad? He's asking those deep, deep, deep questions that we all wrestle with at different times. So with some friends, hadn't seen him for a couple of years, starts talking about the work he's doing, personal work. He's like, Vince, my kids used to walk right by me and be like, hey, Dad. Whew. Subtext, hey, Dad, I don't want to be around you because I don't really like you. Talk about a painful realization, huh? And he realized there's some foundational work that I need to do as a human being so I'm not an ass to my kids so they don't want to actually spend time with me. I can tell you story after story of these foundational things we have to wrestle through as human beings. And right now, with all the stress of COVID and long-term stress that we've been dealing with, and you name it, it just feels like it's the time to go back and say, okay, what's the core of this? What's the work we need to do? What's the foundational work we need to do? So I'm going to invite you, starting next week, I'm going to kick it off, right? Yeah, I'm going to kick it off. Start talking about what it is that we as humans need to do to find full, fulfilling, and love-filled lives, where we can love the people we want. My buddy said after the work he's doing, he's like, my kids want to hang out with me all the time. It's actually getting a little bit too much. I'm like, go hang out with your friends, right? When's that happened? But it's because he's willing to do that work. So I want to invite you, starting next week, invite people in your life. You know there's people in your life, like my buddy, who are in the midst of this, who are wrestling with these deep foundational questions. Invite them out. Throw them a solid. Say, hey, look, I don't know if you like church or what, but come on. You'll wrestle it out. You'll figure it out. You'll think deeper. I think that just makes the world around us even a little bit more better. So, see you next week. I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Fowler.
Good morning. My name's Vince, just a different Vince. I've been coming here for a little while. He's been here much longer. Welcome to Friends Church. It's nice to see some familiar faces who I've seen before. Nice to see you. It's nice to see some new faces. Really welcome for being here. And if you're online home streaming, last week I was watching from the gym, so you can literally tune into Friends, whether in person or online, and we're grateful for that. So thank you very much. I want to give a shout out to all of our current pre-authorized giving members. It would be, if I were to say there are some challenging times, I think we're all familiar with that, what that means, and it's those contributions that keep coming in month after month after month that make all of this, what Friends is and what we do, easy. And if you've been listening for a while, you've been participating in one way or another, whether it's in here or online, and Friends has had any kind of impact in your life. It's what was for me, the impact on my life, the things it gave me to consider, to do, to be curious about. That's why I contribute. So if Friends has made any sort of impact in your life, any donation, whether it's one time or continuous, it's really, really helpful to continue that impact in the lives of others. Now, if you, so you can do it on the app, but there's another piece on the app. So donating on the app is really easy. But on the app, there's you'll see on the bottom, I think it's the second little button over on the very bottom, it's called Contact. If you're new and this place is starting to feel like home for you, click that Contact button. I think it's like 2 or 3 down. You'll see a little heart and Connect. And in there's some information. Fill it out. That'll allow us to communicate with you on a regular basis. If you're interested in volunteering, if you're interested in participating in one way or another, if you're interested in just having a conversation with one of the pastors and maybe you need some pastoral support, it's all available there. So it's really important that if that's something you want to do, please do it. It's super simple. And then lastly, a lot of us, when we're not here, we're listening over either YouTube or we're listening over iTunes. We only have 18 reviews. And there's another church down the road that has 375,000. Okay? We're not winning that one. And we love to win, right? The more reviews we have, the more likely we go to heaven. I'm kidding. We're already in heaven. This is it. So hope you enjoy the day. Hope you enjoy the message. I had some insight on it. I'm excited for it. And just kick back and breathe and enjoy.
Good morning, everyone. To you out there who are listening in and to you who are in person, wonderful to have you part of Friends Church this morning. It's a kind of one of those dreary days here in Calgary, so it's kind of nice to be indoors. I want to begin with a story. It's a story I heard a couple years ago. Actually, I read it, and it hasn't left me. I've told it numerous times since that time. It's in many different ways. It's a very common story, but it's a story of a girl. She was a part of a family. Her dad, his work required them as a family to move quite a bit, and so her growing up years, adolescent years, were involved a lot of starting and stopping school, making new friends, trying to fit in, and then finding out they're moving again, and then having to go through the process again and again. Probably the part of her story that really caught my attention the most was at a point when she was in grade 8. She was going into grade 8, and she found out the family was going to be moving again. Man, grade 8, that's a tough time, isn't it? Kids can be ruthless in junior high. She was not at all wanting to move, but her mom told her that because of the timing of the move, she would be able to try out for the drill team. This is like the cheerleading squad in certain cultures down in the States. She was pretty pumped. Her mom had been head of her drill team when she was young and in school. And so this girl got so excited, she thought, wow, if I could make the drill team, wouldn't that be amazing? Like, I could be a part of a team. I could get to know these girls. I mean, in her mind, she had these visions of sleepovers and, spontaneous sing-alongs with the girls. And, they could maybe be dating some football players. I mean, there's all these ideas in her mind, but more than anything, it was like the holy grail of belonging for her. She would just be a part of something where everyone is doing everything in lockstep, and she'd be one of the girls. This is something she'd never felt like she had ever experienced. So when she went out, she started joining the whole group of girls that were trying out for this team. She got a routine. She started going home at night long after the rehearsals, and she would practice her moves. And in the morning, she was practicing, listening to the music, practicing, trying everything she can to get this routine down. The day came when tryouts were actually happening. Whole story in that she was not really up on everything that everyone did for these tryouts, but you know what, she went in there and she gave it her best shot. After it was all done, they said, come back tonight and the results will be posted on the wall outside the gym. She goes home and she's nervous, she's so excited, she just has all these dreams and this excitement about being a part of this team. It was a Friday. Her family were planning on going to her grandparents' place, and so they loaded up the vehicle. Everyone was packed up, and they drove to the school before they're going to head out of town. Family stayed in the car. She ran into the school. She comes down to the hallway where the gym is, and there's this big crowd of girls all huddling around the wall, trying to find their number. She was 62, and so she was like, oh. She finally takes her turn. She's looking up on the list. She sees all these numbers, all these names. She scans quickly to where the 60s are. She says she sees 60. She says she sees 61, and then it jumps down to 64 and 65. She says she couldn't process it. She began just scouring all over the page, thinking maybe they posted him somewhere else here. Meanwhile, there's girls jumping up and down, hugging each other, just so excited that they saw their name on the list. Her heart begins to race. She's just like, oh my God, I gotta be on this. She said, I thought if I could just stare at the list long enough, my number would appear. And then that sick feeling just took over. She said, I didn't make it. She walked through all the girls that knew each other and the excitement. And she said she did the walk of shame back to the car. Her dad had been head of the football team when he was in high school. Her mom, head of the drill team. To say they were shocked, she says they were ashamed of me and they were ashamed for me. She said 2 hours to my grandparents' place, just the reality of it all just began to drop. No friends. No sleepovers. No fitting in. She said, I not only felt like the whole desire to belong was shot. She said, I didn't even feel like I belonged to my own family now. Oh. I remember reading that story and just, hey, I never tried out for no drill team, but I know that feeling of just so badly wanting to belong with a group of people that notice when I'm not there. Who, when I walk into the room, they go, hey, Jeff's here, guys. I know that feeling of just wanting to feel like I fit. I've watched this, not just in my life, I've watched this in the lives of so many people. I watched it in my mom. Oh, man. She went through this divorce with my dad, and all of a sudden it's like her number stopped showing up on the wall. It's like the invitations stopped coming for people inside the church. We weren't included the way we once were. Just out of curiosity, do you know who this girl was? Whose story I just told? It's Brene Brown. Famous social researcher. You see her in TED Talks, and she's a great author. She tells the story in her book, Braving the Wilderness. You know, though it may look different for each of us, I believe every one of us wants to experience belonging. This sense of deep, meaningful connection with others on some level. And whether it's in a church community like this, here at Friends, or it's in your own family, to feel like you fit there. Maybe it's with a friend or a friend group. For some, they just want to feel like they belong with their partner, and that seems to be a struggle. We have this craving for connection. It was a famous psychologist, Abraham Maslow, who ranked love and belonging at the very top of the needs of humanity, right below literal survival, trying to stay alive, and then finding some way to sustain your life, finding work or whatever. Beyond that, love and belonging is like top of the list in terms of craving that we have. If you study common themes and stories and the poetry and the wisdom literature of our spiritual ancestors, we tell the stories often from within the Bible. But so many stories have this theme of wanting to find home, wanting to be a part, constantly trying to identify who are we? Who are we as a collective? Come on, let's build our sense of family, our sense of identity. And you can be a part of this. And here's what we do different from what they do. This has been the journey of humanity for as long as we've known. Finding a place that says, yeah, you matter here. Come on, make room. That guy, he's here. He's in. He's with us. What's terrifying is that when you look at the stats, less and less people are experiencing this. The number of people who have no one to talk to about difficult things, it's tripled in the last decade. The average social circle has shrank by a third in the same time period, decade. More people don't have a confidant than those that do. In the 70s, I found this fascinating. 2/3 of people in the Western world attended some kind of club or gathering, like a sports team, a hobby, special interest groups, causes. They say by the 1990s, so that was in the 70s, 2/3. By the 1990s, 2/3 had never attended any kind of club gathering. There's a shift that's been happening in some places, very obviously, in some other areas, very subtly. More than ever today, people are losing their sense of belonging and meaningful connection. And I am betting that there are some here today listening to me, and you know what I'm talking about. When I read Brené's story, it wouldn't leave me because it's just such a familiar story. I've watched it when new people have moved onto our block and have struggled to break into the existing neighbor circles. I've watched as some have undergone lifestyle changes. Some have come out of the closet, whether with a new realization of their sexual identity or their beliefs. Something shifted. Some have changed their political leanings. Some have decided to make a health change and got fit. Something as simple as that. Some have gone through sickness. Some have had incredible business success. Others have failed in business. And each time it seems there's a shift, there's a change, all of a sudden it's like their community goes through some kind of disruption. And it's like they're looking up on the wall and their number goes missing. The phone stops ringing. People start treating them, looking at them differently. Things relationally have changed. And some would say, all of a sudden, my sense of belonging and community just went out the window, it evaporated into thin air. Some will change jobs or move locations geographically. Like sometimes just the simplest little things, and they just go, I just feel like my circle is changed. Many have shown up here at Friends Church longing for not just for some good guidance, longing not just to experience some kind of spiritual experience, but to be hoping to be a part of kind of like a family, to experience a sense of community where they can be known, where they can be seen and heard, maybe understood. Man, I'd love to say that every person that has come in here looking for that has found it. Some have walked away sorely disappointed, frustrated, looking for this sense, and they're just like going, oh, how does this happen? That has been my question for a long time. How do you make that happen? What makes a group, a neighborhood, a workplace, a church community feel like home, like you belong? What's the secret? Is there one? I've talked about this in different ways over the years. And sometimes I feel like I'm scratching on something that I go, oh, I think there's something to this here. And I share about it. And I think the question that I'm asking here is complex. But I want to talk about a couple things that I see again and again as contributing factors to someone struggling to find that sense of belonging. From the time she was young, Brene felt different from those in her circles. Whether it was the color of her skin, her family's socioeconomic status, her sense of style, her personality, even her name at one point separated her from others because it was considered a name for people of color, not Brene, but Cassandra. I didn't even know that. She writes about this. She experienced racism just because of her name, and it would separate her. For some, it's been that way for you. You just have never really easily fit into a group. There's parts of your life, your way of being, behaving, the way you see the world, things that you believe. I don't know. Some that have just will say to me, I just have never easily fit into the groups and tribes that have surrounded me. I've always kind of felt a little bit on the outside. Maybe your family was more extroverted and you were the introvert. Maybe everyone was into sports, but you're like, no, please, no. Maybe it was your musical taste or your food taste. Everyone's into spicy, yeah, and I can't eat spicy. Everyone's always going to the bar. Everyone's into that bar scene. I just don't like it. I hear these stories all the time. It's just things that have left you on the outside looking in. For others of you, you could say that at one point, maybe you felt like you fit in. You had a community that you felt like you belonged in, or a group, or a posse, or just even a couple friends, or you felt like, yeah, and then something changed, and it went away. Man, I remember talking to someone who said that just they were struggling and they had to quit drinking. They said that removed a whole community, people I loved. It was just like we didn't know how to be together, and I lost them. Changing your diet, man, some people that have to go on an extreme diet. He said it's a social killer. Because I can't even go to the place. It's like, well, you got some rice crackers or something else? I don't know how to tell, whatever. A shift in how you spend your time, your money, a shift in values. It's just you find yourself alienated. And if you're serious about this spiritual journey, likely as you think deeper and deeper about who you are, why are you doing what you're doing, or whatever, you'll notice your beliefs shifting. You'll notice your worldview perhaps expanding. Parts of the way you used to think and talk starts changing. And sometimes those changes, if you can believe this, they can be threatening to your social circle, to your tribe, to the community who loved you. You're morphing and changing, but all of a sudden your growth feels awkward to them. I've had some people say that now all of a sudden with some of these changes, they start speaking about it and it creates all this disruption in the family. All of a sudden it's just like this wall has gone up. And what is so good in their own life, and as they share about it, as they talk about it, it just creates sparks. It creates resistance. It creates awkwardness. And now it's almost driving a wedge into their relationships. Have you experienced any of this? These are all complications that create this breach that all of a sudden leaves us going, oh, I just want to feel like I belong. Regardless of why it is that you might feel like you're on the outside, you should know that there are a couple choices that people have made to find a place to belong, that they've done to overcome some of these things that I'm talking about. Brene wanted so badly to fit in to the current circles, the tribes that surrounded her, that she became an expert at fitting in. She became adept at knowing her circles, the people she was around better than they knew themselves. That was how she described it. Over time, she learned how to be what others wanted her to be to fit in. Oh, we're doing that kind of food? Yeah, I love that food. Great. Hey, we're all going out here tonight. Oh, awesome. Over time, she learned how to be what others wanted her to be to fit in. But that belonging came at an expense of her own self. She wouldn't call that true belonging. It was kind of a pseudo-belonging. In fact, she says in the process, she lost herself. She became something so that she could be accepted, so that her name would show up on the wall. She said if she had stayed on that road of pseudo-belonging, that path of assimilation, she said she would have lost her health, she would have lost her marriage, she would have lost her sobriety. She had to find a different way. So you need to know option one, and that's one that many have taken. Brene took it to her demise, was to be quiet about her own sense of belief, value, to not open up about who she was, what she valued, her preferences, her lifestyle. Instead, she just figured out the values of those around her and said, I'll be that. What do we like? Okay, I'm in. I wouldn't recommend that because it is a short game. And I've talked about this. I talked about this a number of weeks ago from another angle. It's a short game that leads to misery. And those are the people who often say, I am so frickin' lonely. And yet you look at them and they are surrounded by people. They got family everywhere. They got neighbors that they're with. They got coworkers and circles. They got this massive tribe all around them. And they say, no one sees me. No one hears me. No one knows me. Option 1, fitting in. Option 2. Well, option 2 is to move in the opposite direction of just fitting in. And that is to think really deep about who you are. This is what Brene spent much of that book, Brave in the Wilderness, talking about. It's doing the hard work of saying, who am I? This is the deep work. Understanding what are your tastes? What are your preferences? What is your personality? What works for you? Quit thinking about what works for them. Think about what works for you, and that's okay. What do you truly value? Again and again, it feels like over this last 3 months, as I'm covering so different subjects in the messages that I've been talking to, so much of the time, the fix, the solution, at least part of it, sometimes a little part, sometimes a big part, is freaking knowing what your values are. What do you value? We need to do a workshop this fall, helping us find our values, personal values. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What lights you up? What is your passion? What are the things you want to talk about? What concerns you in the world? What topics, when someone brings them up, do you just go, yeah, right there. Let's just stop and talk about that. It's not enough, though, to know ourselves. It's that we have to accept ourselves. We have to own who we are. Many people, and I'm telling you, this is me. I get better ideas of who I am. And as my awareness grows of who I am, I realize I've got a choice. I can just find out who I am. But this second step of just going, no, I own who I am. And with the people that I'm doing life with, I need to bring who I am to the surface. Brene says true belonging only happens when we're able to present our authentic, imperfect selves to the world. Our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance. Which is why we here at Friends Church, you'll hear us harping over it again and again. You are on a frickin' unique journey. Your journey is like no one else in this room or anyone else that's listening to this live stream right now. You have a story, you have an experience, you have a place of origin that is not like anyone else. And as a result, your values look a little different than everyone else. Your lifestyle, your habits, your patterns, your passions, your cravings, your weird dysfunctions, they're different than mine. Lord knows, mine is different than yours. I'm a weird bird, but man, it's unique, and I gotta own it. And we need to allow people to own it. Let me ask you something. How much time have you spent thinking about the things that separate or differentiate you from others? How much time have you really spent just kind of thinking, how am I different? What codes, what beliefs, what ways of being in the tribes that you've been a part of have perhaps you forced underground? What things have you had to hide because you believe that, man, if that was front and center, Oh, the number comes off the wall. What warts have you said, I'll show everyone everything but this? Oh, on Sunday, I'll show up. But I tell you, this is staying in the car. Because I know what will happen. True belonging comes only after you're able to own and accept who you are. Even if it means being able to stand alone. Because being who you are has forced your name off of someone's list. For those who have done this hard work to figure it out, to discover who they are, the next question becomes, well, who in my life will actually accept who I am? Who I represent, what I'm about. Let me ask you, have you thought much about the people in your life who will truly accept who you are as you are? Brené's story killed me when she talks about being in the car and her parents not saying a word after they find out she didn't make the team. And realizing her own parents might not accept who she is, as she is. Oh. When we come out to people in our lives, and coming out can look so many different ways. There will be some delightful surprises, but there will also be some disappointments. And I know I'm looking at some people who have felt that. How people respond will determine whether you can remain or whether you need perhaps to move on, to find community in a different way, in a different group, through other people. Oh, it doesn't mean that you just burn the bridge and you leave those people behind. But this is kind of the journey of finding belonging. It's figuring out where can you truly belong. And if someone can't look you in the eye and say, your number appears on my list, you are good. Don't you feel like you have to be anything other than yourself with me? You don't feel that. I'm going to tell you right now, what you got there is a pseudo sense of connection. And what's sad is I talk to people all the time, that's the only kind of connection they've known. I could go on and talk about the process of having those connections. I could talk about the process of starting over and looking for building new community. I'm going to save that for other messages, but this morning I want to speak to one other group of people before I close. And that's those of you who truly do know who you are. In fact, that's not your problem. There's some people who you've always had a strong sense of identity. You ain't apologizing for who you are. I am whose I am. And in fact, you have no problem telling people who you are. And if they don't like it, they can kiss your cheek if they want. You pick the cheek. Your concern has never been about trying to fit in. In fact, you've defaulted perhaps more often than not doing life alone whenever there's been any issue. You just say, goodbye. I'll be over here. For you, perhaps the question you wrestle with most is whether you can accept and you can love others in your life who are different from you. This is a different side of belonging. There are some who are very lonely, who don't feel like they can connect. And it's not about the fact that others won't accept them, it's that they struggle to accept others. Perhaps your strong values or your strong preferences or opinions, perhaps they've forced someone else in your life to make a choice, to either hide who they are so that you can accept them, or they just move away, hold themselves at arm's length. They don't ever come close to you for fear that your displeasure, your disapproval, the judgment, whatever, leaves them out there. This happens. And once again, this is for me. We can do this with friends. Sometimes it's easier to do it with family. People who are so close to us, to just act in a way that isn't really filtering our displeasure with choices, preferences, opinions, styles. If I think over the years, I've not filtered my responses to my kids. They're probably number one. Kathy, right up there. And it's affected the sense of belonging. It's only been after I'm realizing, wow, I don't like it when those around me weigh in too heavily on who I am. Why am I doing it here? And I see this in the stories of others who right now feel alienated from their own families, not because they can't be themselves, but because others around them can't be themselves. Sometimes these people in our lives, they distance themselves from us because of the things that we joke about. And without us even realizing it, they're hearing subtle things in our jokes that are suggesting, if that's you, you know how I feel. This can happen so subtly. Some people just end up like alone on an island. Strong sense of identity. They know who they are. But an intolerance for people to be who they are. Let me ask you, how tolerant are you of other people's preferences? Music, clothing styles, sexual identities, preferences, parenting styles, diet choices. Oh man, I could list 1,000 things on here. Sometimes we can struggle with in the lives of others. Perhaps this morning, for some of you who would find themselves more on this side of the spectrum, you know who you are, but you struggle more with who others are. Maybe the challenge for you is to just be more accepting, to ask more questions, to be more open and curious, to learn more about and to embrace other ways of being, of living, of thinking, of believing. Would you be open to that? Here at Friends, we want to be a spiritual community that helps you make a positive impact in your world. I'm going to just be straight up with you. whether you have a few friends or a million friends, you know what? I don't really care. That is the honest truth. I don't care how. You know what? My agenda is that you become a beacon of impact and positive change in the world. But I believe belonging is connected to that. That's my slant. Now, I want everyone to feel a deep sense of belonging. But my angle is, I think if you can go there, you will light your world on fire and it will change your life too. So, get on it. Like, figure it out. You need help? Come and talk to us. Is there a struggle in here? Is there a complication? Is there a wrinkle in here that I've botched as I've talked this morning? Come and talk to. I would love to. Because I think as you feel a greater sense of belonging, it will change your world, and it will change the world of those around you. Bar none. All right, I'm done. Take a moment to reflect on that this week, won't you? Hey? Put that in your proverbial pipe and smoke it. Let's get out there and make an effort to belong, to help others around you belong. So, whatever side on that, do something with it. Have a great week this week, will you? Will you light it up? And even with masks on, even with all that goes on in this world, you can be a light in this world. You can be. Make a choice today to do that. All right, you already heard what's up next week. Vince is on Foundational. It's going to be fantastic. Pick up the app if you haven't downloaded it. You out there who are listening to this, if this means something to you, if you got questions, even though you can't come and talk to us even personally, maybe you don't live in Calgary even, drop us a note. Email us. We want to help. All right? Have a great week.